As a rights holder myself, I have a long-standing interest in the evolving ways in which content and audiences can be connected. Over the past year, my role as president of the FDA has enabled me to work directly with the distribution sector and getting to know aspects of it for the very first time. In delivering cinema audiences in an imaginative manner and maximizing the return on their investment, distribution is the linchpin of the whole industry. And naturally, the fundamental principles of teamwork and project management that I enjoyed as a filmmaker apply just as much in distribution. Self-evidently, audiences go to the cinema only to the extent that there is content that drives them to the box office. And UK distributors invest more than £300 million a year on launching and promoting their titles. As I observe in the new FDA yearbook, if content is king, then distribution is unquestionably the kingmaker. This seems a good moment to point out that I'm very proud of the commitment of the distribution sector and the commitment it makes as a whole to the industry's future. I'll just offer three quick and fairly taken off-the-shelf examples. The first is the FDA's 20-year track record in sponsoring the National Film and Television School, whose graduates populate the crews of an ever-increasing number of theatrical releases. Secondly, the rising investment FDA itself makes in tailored training programs for distribution professionals. And thirdly, the supply of subtitles and audio description files to exhibitors, which has served to make the cinema experience so much more accessible to a great number of people who didn't go to the cinema. And that's been achieved in a quite extraordinary way in the last decade. My very good friend Richard Attenborough characteristically put this well-nigh perfectly when he said that human beings have an unquenchable thirst for stories. And as a means of satisfying that thirst, feature films are without equal. Films only achieve their extraordinary potential to move, to excite, to amuse and surprise when they're able to reach an audience week in and week out. And in today's world, where the media are a constant background to all of our lives, younger audiences in particular demand an active role in the content they choose. They want to be able to view it how and when they want, to mash up their own trailer soundtracks and post them on YouTube, to have a dialogue with advertisers rather than being addressed or sold to as merely passive consumers. All of this represents a fundamental sea change in their behavior as informed 21st century citizens. And many of you are having to deal with this phenomenon in your own daily work. Film distributors have had to become a lot more sophisticated in seeding information and materials to a whole plethora of target audience networks. Brand cinema, to use the current generic term, is in rude health, with many qualities that make it unique and to an extent timeless. But as we all know, nothing stands still. This is an industry that thrives on innovation and renewal, from sound and color in previous generations to digital effects, technologies, and exclusive content streams for online users in this one. Back in the 1980s, video may have been regarded, perhaps not unnaturally, as something of a threat. But in the event, it grew the overall market for film to everyone's benefit. New ideas are tested and new precedents are constantly set. And as you'd expect in a sector with more than 500 new releases, that's to say new product launches every year, that's not easy. Self-evidently, this is not an industry that's short of ideas or short of ambition, which is just as well, because if the industry ever failed to move in lockstep with the times, then the audience would very quickly leave it behind. The analog 35mm format, that's to say a global standard for practically a century, is now well on its way out. Just as digital transition is underway in television, so too it is for the screen. Digital cinema keeps venues at the cutting edge of screen entertainment and brings with it far more programming flexibility for cinema operators to cater to the tastes of local populations. I could go on at great length about that, and maybe we'll pick it up in the questions later. Basically, digital cinema offers local populations something that's never been available to them before. For example, premium archived content has become seriously valuable to many digital TV broadcasters. And who knows, the same may well become true for digital cinema exhibitors looking to further populate their daytime audiences. Meanwhile, as robust as the cinema business is, the home entertainment sector has experienced a fair degree of turbulence. DVD has been the reliable and essential cash cow for much of the past 2 decades, building on the earlier success of VHS. So quite naturally, the recent decline in DVD outlets and revenues is very keenly felt. As audience preferences and purchasing patterns evolve, It becomes ever more vital that distributors also have flexibility over their release dates. Their mandate is to deliver the biggest overall audience for each movie they distribute. And this is a marketplace where one size definitely does not fit all. And expecting a digital transition of this scale, national and international, to happen without a set of fairly robust negotiations was always entirely unrealistic. But please don't misread the signals. Everybody, without exception, wants the cinema sector to continue to thrive. And the industry as a whole is absolutely determined to row with the tide and not against it. Moving on, digital cinema brings another transformational benefit, that's to say modern 3D. I saw it demonstrated at a trade show in Singapore a couple of years ago, and I'm not at all surprised at the powerhouse 3D has rapidly become in cinemas around the world, and increasingly in other media as well. Of the £1 billion spent at the UK box office last year, no less than £1 in every 8 went on a 3D movie. And whenever they had a choice, consumers favoured 3D over the 2D version by a ratio of around 3-1. As part of what cinemas offer, this really is a game changer, and it's here to stay. There were 13 releases in 3D last year, and you can expect at least twice that number in the coming year. It didn't take long for other sectors to harness the extra dimension. Sky's 3D channel kicks off later this year with one live football match and 3 or 4 other appointment-to-view programs, films maybe, in 3D every week. Trust me, I've seen it. High-definition 3D sport could be another huge game changer. Meanwhile, during London Fashion Week a fortnight ago, Burberry's catwalk show was the first ever to be streamed live in 3D. Just wait until that's the norm and designer labels start marketing their own ultra-cool 3D glasses for people to strut their stuff in at movies. As the digital cinema transition progresses, there will of course be squalls and storm clouds all along the way. That's absolutely inevitable, but it fails to be the big picture. The big challenge confronting the whole of the movie industry is how to remodel itself as an engine of wealth creation. In order to thrive, the industry, indeed, to my mind, every rights holder, is going to need a new form of social contract with their consumers. The concept of copyright has never been as challenged as it is today, yet it remains the fundamental foundation upon which the revenues that enable future investment to be generated and the means by which every citizen gains legitimate access to culture and entertainment. So what's to do? Well, as someone whose recent life has been dominated by the Digital Economy Bill, here's my small contribution to this ongoing debate. The UK's black market runs into quite literally billions of pounds a year. Now, I don't believe for a second, and I see no evidence, that today's young generation of consumers is inherently criminal and has no intention of ever paying for anything. But multi-channel broadcasting and the web have brought a massive proliferation in viewing options, an explosion of choice, and as we've learned to our cost, content in a digital form is relatively easy to transfer and copy. The fact that unlawful file sharing and downloading is so rife, involving millions of UK citizens, suggests to me at least 3 points. Firstly, they want the content. Well, thankfully, the industry knows that already and is only too eager to satisfy the legitimate demand in whatever way it can. Point 2, significant numbers of people are effectively saying in no uncertain terms that they want access to content in ways that are more flexible than those the industry sometimes seems to be offering. Again, the industry is well aware that its content must be available in ways that consumers want and at prices they can afford. And that's quite obviously in its own best interest too. Thankfully, a quick browse at iTunes, Tesco Online, LoveFilm or BT Vision, to name but a few, will show you where this trend is already happening. This exemplifies the way in which the industry is managing change, I think, and dealing with both traditional and emerging platforms at the same time. It's still early days in terms of fully realizing the digital opportunity. If the measures contained in the Digital Economy Bill prove successful in reducing unlawful peer-to-peer file sharing, then the move to legal online platforms and partnerships can only accelerate. My last point on this is this. Assuming our customers are not inherently criminal, many consumers, as became increasingly clear during the passage of the bill through the Lords, are simply unsure when it comes to downloading as to what is lawful and what is not. Notifying people about unauthorized file sharing on their accounts and asking them to desist, especially when there are repeated instances, is of course a necessary first step. It must be carried out fairly, accurately, proportionately, and with all due discretion. Given my third point a moment ago, such notifications should be able to deal with a considerable amount of current infringement. But the underlying issue remains what I can only describe as the social contract, to ensure that people do think twice before downloading, developing an instinctive understanding for the livelihoods of the people employed to make and deliver their entertainment. We need to establish beyond reasonable doubt that if people want films on offer in a variety of ways and formats, as we hope and believe they do, then they are actually required to pay a fair price.